Welcome. Council acknowledges the Wadawurrung traditional owners of this land, and I pay my respects to all elders past and present and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Geelong community today. This meeting is being broadcast on the internet and the recording of the meeting will be published on Council's website. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. As you can see, tonight's meeting is being held entirely online. All the councillors have dialed in via Zoom. This is now allowable under the emergency measures passed by the Victorian Parliament in late April, and it's the second time that this council has done this process. We've all agreed, given the current circumstances in Victoria, that this is the most appropriate format. The health advice is to conduct meetings from home where possible, and as councillors we wanted to be setting a positive example. It won't actually change anything as far as the debate or decision-making process goes, it's just that we're not in the same room. And note also that we may also go back into the chamber on occasion if we think it more appropriate for the discussion at hand or if the circumstances change. But as for the community, it doesn't change a thing either, given we're all streaming online as usual. You probably get a better view of us actually, and we get to see each other more like the Brady Bunch than around a room. So it's something a little different. Now, a big thanks to the Greater Geelong community for your ongoing efforts to limit the spread of COVID-19, particularly at this critical time. We know the numbers are fairly intense in Melbourne and Wyndham and Colac, of course, as well. So we have great empathy for the people in those regions and those people who are locked down. We encourage everybody locally in the Greater Geelong region to stay committed to all the great things you've been doing and all the things you've been asked to do, such as the physical distancing and also maintaining that good hygiene. It's also been made really clear to us over the past week that if we experience symptoms, we really need to get tested straight away and then isolate at home until we've received our results. So I'd encourage everybody to follow the updated health advice for regional Victoria of wearing a mask in public as well if you can't be sure that you'll be physically distant from others at times. It's certainly been encouraging to see a lot of masks being worn out there in the community. And thank you particularly to our health workers, because we know that you have a very difficult time at the moment. Now, we have a busy agenda tonight, so we will get going with the meeting. I don't think we have any apologies for tonight. Everybody's here, which is terrific. I don't have any requests for leave of absence either on the minutes and the notes. If anybody could please move the minutes for council meeting held on the 30th of June. Can I have a mover? Councillor Grisbeck, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Manane, thank you. All those in favour, raise hands and we can see it on the screen. Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Can I also have a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting the special meeting held on the 21st of July? Moved Councillor Murray, seconded Councillor Mason. Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict on anything for tonight's agenda? Councillor Murray, did you raise your hand just then? No? Maybe not. No? Okay, so no declarations. If any declarations of conflict do arise during the meeting, please let me know. No, you didn't have one, Pete? Thank you. Okay, next agenda item is public question and submission time. And of course, we don't have members of the community in the gallery because we're not there either. And we are still very well aware that that's an aspect of our community meetings that we can't enjoy the people in the gallery. So hopefully this situation will change, but we have been accepting questions and submissions online. We've received 4 questions and submissions in the last fortnight. Each person has now received a response also via email. And it's important to note that each councillor also reads every question and submission sent in. We won't read them out in full, but for the record and for the sake of transparency, the following people sent in questions or submissions and have received a reply so far. We've had Vicky Perrott, Jennifer Banto, Harrison Pascal and Sally Fisher. So thank you to those people for submitting your questions and submissions. They're always really interesting comments. The question and answer provided will be published in the minutes of the meeting also, and they're available online by Friday this week. Now, do we have a petition to be tabled, I believe? Councillor Mason, thank you. Unmute. Well done, Councillor Mason. Oh, you're muted. There we go.
I have a petition from Mr. Jeff Bolch on behalf, and there are 67 signatures from St Leonard's. And it's a petition to reopen the public reserve in Turnberry Close. And I table this on behalf of Councillor Sullivan and myself.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mason. We'll consider that tabled. Thank you, and thank you to the signatories of that petition. That's excellent. Okay, Section B, reports. The first item for report section is number 1, Social Infrastructure Plan, Generation 1 2020 to 2023. to be moved by Councillor Murnane, thank you, and seconded Councillor Mansfield. Thank you very much, Councillor Murnane. Need to unmute Councillor Murnane.
My apologies. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item requests Council to endorse the social infrastructure plan called Generation 1 2020-23 and its accompanying social infrastructure planning and investment policy. The decision to create this plan started way back in 2016 when the Council's transformation program, post the administrators, identified the need for the development of a social infrastructure plan as a priority to guide our council and all future councils on investment decisions in social infrastructure. Mindful that the city annually invests approximately 1/3 of its annual expenditure on social infrastructure, it's a very important piece of investment. In fact, this council, in its own council plan in 2018-22, identified in its vision putting the community first and did some work on this regard. The Social Infrastructure Plan Generation 21 aims to ensure that there is a fair and equitable approach to how investments are made across our communities, ensuring that there's an equal spread of investment across community places, across community spaces, and across community services. I'd like to recognise the work of our Director of Community Life, Robin Stevens, and her entire department, who have done an excellent job of putting this plan together. It is really a first-rate document. I've been impressed by the scope of the plan because of its broad investment objectives. It leaves no part of the community behind. In particular, its intention to continue to invest in social infrastructure to support health, wellbeing and connectedness. An observation that I've made with regard to the plan, this plan has traditionally sat under the portfolio of sport and recreation, and it still does. That would explain why Geelong, as a municipality, ranks very highly amongst its peers with sporting and recreation facilities. We really do have a great city in that regard. However, as a city, we also have some of the state's most disadvantaged suburbs, suburban areas, and we do have an urgent need for many of the essential services around health and around happiness in our community. This social infrastructure plan and its accompanying planning and investment policy will now help us to address that imbalance. I think I'll leave it there, Madam Mayor, and make a couple of final comments later.
Thank you, Councillor Murnane. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. I too would like to thank and congratulate the officers who have put so much work into preparing this document, and also to the community members who provided us with such valuable feedback in the consultation process. This is a really important document for council moving forward. What social infrastructure refers to is the communal places, spaces and services that council provides, and it's actually over 1/3 of everything that we do, social infrastructure. So it includes things like buildings and open spaces, but also a lot of services, IT infrastructure and information. And in the current environment, those non-physical aspects of social infrastructure are becoming even more important. Deciding what social infrastructure is needed and when to invest, this is a real challenge for local governments, and this plan is welcome because it provides some clear input for us regarding how those decisions should be made. Importantly, it looks at how social infrastructure quite holistically and across the whole municipality. and it takes into account things like social and economic demographics of our community and the importance of including a diverse range of needs. The demographic information included in the plan just in itself is worth a look at. It includes things like age breakdowns, education, employment backgrounds in all the different pockets of our municipality, and it makes for really interesting reading, getting to understand what the makeup of our community is. And I think it also helps to identify where the needs are. One thing that I'll highlight from the community feedback that was received is that respondents felt that this plan is fair and improved transparency. And I think that's so important when it comes to making decisions about when and where to invest ratepayers' money back into our community. And I think this helps us to get the best and fairest outcome for the whole community based on need rather than access to influence or ability to lobby. This is really about a needs-based approach for our whole region. The plan also allows for adaptation to challenges as they arise. So it's not fixed. We can change as we need to. And I think given that COVID is having such a huge impact on how our social infrastructure works, we can't meet and use places like we previously had. Hopefully we'll be able to return to that, but at the moment we can't. I think as a council going forward, this will be a major challenge about how we can work together to provide appropriate social infrastructure that still enables that community connection and support for everyone out there who relies on council for that. So I'll leave it there. But again, thank you to our officers and the community for all your feedback. I think this is an excellent document.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks to the councillors that have spoken to this report already. I agree. It's an important bit of policy, as Councillor Sarah has already indicated. It's probably as an individual councillors where we spend most of our time is in this space. If you have a look at the areas that it covers, they're broad and wide. From leisure and recreation spaces to footpaths to public toilets to education and training facilities. So I think that the policy is great in terms of providing content and some direction of where council should be investing and how we make those decisions in the future. Having said that, I don't think we should ever underestimate the important role that ward councillors play in their areas of responsibility and in the elected areas that the community have put them in, where it needs to be balanced and complement the input of those ward councillors as well, because there's no better way of understanding the needs of the community than that of being at the grassroots level and engaging with them at the facilities and also hearing the feedback from them. So I understand that our policy has been developed through consultation and feedback, but as we all know, it's not always that we capture the entire community in that. And so the role that we play as councillors in facilitating feedback from the community when it comes to facilities, I think is extremely important. We saw that throughout, the various budgets that we've all been involved. And when it came to lighting, for instance, in the various facilities, I think this will help us, help guide us in terms of that investment, but we should never underestimate the role that we play in that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Well said. Are there any other councillors? Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. I endorse everything that's just been said, and I'd just like to add that this policy is really going to ensure that the city is going to focus on partnerships, and partnerships is really the direction we're going to be heading in, and it's really going to be an exciting thing for many community groups that can start thinking in another way about how they can develop their community infrastructure. Thank you.
Good point, Councillor Mason. Thank you, Councillor Aitken.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. Look, I just wish to also add, I support the comments that are made and the endorsement of the officers' work that's been put in, but I also want to give the community confidence as well too that the most extensive input program that we have in local government is the election process, and that occurs once every 4 years in Victoria. And I certainly encourage and emphasise to the community that this document is certainly a blueprint to assist us, but that election process is certainly the best way that we actually find out about the community's needs on a much broader and grander scale. And also for those councillors that are either re-elected or new councillors from October and November of this particular year, that there's a real emphasis to try to match the aspirations from that election period with this document and develop a 4-year plan for the organisation in terms of infrastructure. So I certainly just want to reassure the community that this document isn't the only basis of what how council will be making decisions. It will be collective decisions that a new council will make. And importantly, we should also recognise that our state and federal colleagues do significantly influence us as well too in terms of social infrastructure. And by that I mean funding that is available. And a good example of that is that in the social infrastructure plan, it doesn't talk about initially the Northern Ballerine swimming facility, but because of federal government intervention in terms of a grant for that particular project, it has elevated it to a significant piece of social infrastructure that the community needs and the council also supports as well too. So my point to finish on again is that this is a good document, but it certainly isn't the only basis of how council is going to make its final decisions and its 4-year plans about social infrastructure within the City of Greater Geelong.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I concur with the comments we've made thus far. I think the particular document, it is such a huge body of work over quite a period of time. And to read through it all, it reads like a bit of a Bible, how we'll solve every problem in the region, which we know is not going to be the case. But it's not to say that we aren't conscious of what our environment holds and the feedback from the community of how they would like to see issues addressed and infrastructure created and constructed. But I think it has to be said in these unusual times that we probably won't have, or the next council probably won't have, what would you say, the normal funds that has been available in the past. So that will certainly have an impact on delivering a lot of the SIP. And I think the community just need to be, I guess, forewarned that there will be further difficulties in delivering. But as has been stated, the state and federal governments, which have been pretty strong in recent times with the COVID issues and getting the flow of support money out there, but that can't last forever. So just make that initial observation. And I guess the one project that I think that we've all been highly supportive of, but yet to get traction and finance is the Northern Arc. If we're talking about social infrastructure, that has been our number one project really since we came back as a council, and I think that's one we need to also not let slip by the wayside just because it's been too hard for the state and feds thus far. That's one that I'd like to see we continue to keep the pressure on and see how we go. But huge document, huge expectations. Let's see if we can meet them.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Howard. Well said. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. And I think just quickly, I just wanted to point out that I think I said this last time when it was out for draft. This makes sure that the services are clear, equitable across the municipality, and they're based on evidence. And I think it's shown and highlighted quite a difference in what we thought was required and what actually is required. And I think this plan will serve us well into the future.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And perhaps picking up on the comments of Councillor Harwood just in relation to what might be available in upcoming budgets. And it really reinforces what the aim of this infrastructure plan is, and that is to ensure a fair approach on how investment is made, and finally a priority guide on how the investment is made. I think that is so important going forward. A comment on the community engagement. It's certainly reached big numbers. From the 1st of May to the 12th of June, it reached over 44,000, 3,600 engagements and 79 formal submissions, which were mostly supportive. And I'll comment on the plan, the future decisions and key priorities, which are providing quality spaces, supporting active lifestyles, supports the growth of localised and regional sporting facilities, delivery of accessible and attractive community infrastructure and based on the community need, amongst other things. And I also like the ability to explore opportunities with the private sector. I think going forward that will be of much importance for this council. And it is reviewed every 4 years with the council plan. So I wanted to congratulate the officers involved in this. There have been certainly many councillor updates over the last 2 or 3 years, and we've got to this stage now. And as I say, the body of work done has been huge. So I congratulate to those involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Well said. I'll just make a quick point. I also would like to pay tribute to Ian Hicks and to Robin Stevens as well and her team for an awful lot of work and an amazing amount of community consultation. This is a very rich document, and I think it's actually something that's been long needed with the clarity of communication as well. So congratulations to the team for a great effort, and just a little note that the Northern Bellarine pool is mentioned in this document. So that's actually really good news because the feedback was unquestionably in support of that. So Councillor Manane to close.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to all my fellow councillors for their comments, especially those who made reference to the work of the community, which has been huge in this particular program. They actually started back in August 18, which is nearly 2 years ago, and we did release a draft 12 months later and got more consultation. And as Councillor Murray stated, in April 2000, when we released the document, there was 3,500 people contributed to that, and 78 formal submissions. So a huge effort over a long period of time, guiding council officers with this document. It is a document for the decade, not just for our council or next council. It does set us up for the decade. And importantly, it is truly a community-endorsed document, very much endorsed by the community. So we go forward with some confidence that we're acting with the community's support. So with that, I'll move the item. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Manane. All those in favour? Great. Those against? Carried. So that's a big job well done by the team, so thank you. Item 2 is the Sustainability Framework and Action Plan update, to be moved by Councillor Contell and seconded by Councillor Grisbeck. I will foreshadow that I'll move an amendment to this, but I'll actually let Councillor Contell speak to the original motion.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, no one would know better than you that this report is here to note the Sustainability Action Plan Engagement Report, and also to prepare or present an updated sustainability framework and action plan for adoption, which is following much consultation. And we also note in the report that we're endorsing the draft sustainability policy. Now, we realise that whenever we mention the word sustainability, many people's minds immediately turns to the environment. And whilst that has some merit, when it comes to this council and our sustainability framework and our action plan, it's not just about the environment, as you well know, Madam Mayor, because you've been the driving force behind this. It's also not just about climate change. It's not just about emergencies. It includes much, much more. The sustainability framework, which is really our governance piece, and our action plan, which I put as our to-do list, provides the foundation to consolidate the city's current and future approach to addressing the issues that impact sustainability. Now, whilst that also includes the environment, includes climate change, it includes our carbon footprint, but it also includes areas of council such as our social sustainability and our financial and economic sustainability. Now, over the last 3 or 4 months, we have consulted with the community regarding both the framework and the action plan, and as a result of the feedback we received, we made a number of amendments and changes. And importantly to note, to implement our sustainability framework and our action plan, that a draft sustainability policy, which is attached to the report, will detail how the sustainability framework will be operationalised across our activities. Now, just to provide a taste of the diversity of the framework and the action plan, I've just got a couple of initiatives that we're either already adopted or well and truly into or about to be put into progress. And some of that is acknowledging that climate change is a global emergency, but that we take local action to address that. It's to support the community and the city to reduce carbon emissions and promote active transport. Now, we've got a report coming through later today or later tonight. I think it's item 7, which it relates to our city zero carbon build program related to the implementation of LED lighting. So that forms part of this as well. It's to implement the city's waste and resource recovery strategy to reduce waste and encourage the reuse and recycling, but also to continue to advocate to the state government for a container deposit scheme, to continue to implement the 20-year settlement strategy so that we meet the needs of the growing population within our boundaries. It's to implement a food policy that improves the health and well-being of our community through local production. From an economic perspective, it's to lead the transition to a green economy and tailored support and local businesses in the community focus on supporting innovation. And also it is to implement our multicultural action plan, our reconciliation action plan, and our mental health plan, just to highlight several matters and initiatives to demonstrate how diverse the framework and the action plan is, and to ensure that the community understand that this is not just about the environment. Whilst it has a big aspect of that in it, there are many, many more matters that we're addressing in here which will provide council the direction in the future. It really is a game changer in the way that we interact with community and how we conduct our business into the future. So with that said, Madam Mayor, I'll leave it to others to make comment because I know it's an exciting topic that many of the councillors will want to talk to.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Councillor Grisbeck?
I'm happy to reserve my right, Madam Mayor.
Okay, look, at this point, because the amendment is really an addition of 2 more reports to be requested, so I'd like to just move the amendment now and perhaps talk to that, and then we can vote that. So do I have a seconder? I think I may have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Mansfield, to second the amendment. Now, I can't share the screen because it apparently obliterates the view of the other councillors. So I'll just quickly read out what we're essentially asking for, which is to request that the Chief Executive Officer provides a report to Council by the 31st of December that includes the following: the public targets that are to be included in the annual reporting program and the sustainability action plan. The public targets include a carbon reduction target to be benchmarked against best practice government and private sector organisations. And the same report by the 31st of December is to develop a public climate change statement as part of the climate change response program, which is already underway. And the second report that I'm requesting is that the Chief Executive Officer provides a report by the 21st of September, so this one comes earlier, with proposed terms of reference for a Sustainability Consultative Committee comprising representatives with a range of environmental management, social and community planning and financial and risk analysis expertise to advise and support the development and implementation of the Sustainability Action Plan. Now, firstly, I'm really aware that there's been an amazing amount of work that's gone on for this suite of documents. So thank you very much to our Director of Governance and Strategy and her team for the great work so far. But it really is critical that this council stays connected to the people providing feedback, and we had a lot of feedback during the consultation period, and I know that those people are also keen to keep up the pace of the action. So that's the essence of the additions that I've requested. This amendment is about keeping things moving, having our eye on the actions that are actually taking place, and also making sure that we're taking a leadership position at the City of Greater Geelong. The first addition about getting the reporting program mapped out for consideration by council, feedback told us that people are really keen to see the city set ambitious targets and a clear public goal around carbon reduction. So specifically, we would like those things to be worked on by the end of the year. And I don't believe we need to benchmark only against local councils. We should be looking at best practice among private and public sector organisations. Local government isn't particularly good in this area of cohesively setting and reporting targets and corporate social responsibility stuff. So I think we need to benchmark ourselves against the best wherever we can. The second addition is about a climate change statement. Rather than getting too complicated around disclosures and how we actually report that, I think we need to make sure that the city at least explains what we're trying to do in terms of climate change response, and that's usually summed up in one statement, and that would form part of the climate change response program. So it's just a little addition to that particular piece of work that I'm requesting. And the final addition is about how to include more community feedback ongoing. It was primarily from environmentally focused groups and individuals that came back to us with the recent submissions, and we'd like to keep up that connection, of course, but also encourage involvement from other special interest groups and relevant experts. Because as Councillor Contell's pointed out, this isn't just about climate change nor about just diversity or just the environment. If there was ever a time to understand how important the triple bottom line is, not just the financial bottom line, it's right now as we face a global health pandemic. We've got a climate emergency and potentially a worldwide economic crisis as well. So we really need to make sure that our recovery, particularly after this pandemic, is about sustainability from a broad perspective. So that's the intent of the amendment. I can't put it up on the screen, but it doesn't interfere with what's already been done. It's just pushing it that little bit further and making sure that the community stays involved. So thank you. Councillor Mansfield?
I'll reserve my right on Diane.
On an amendment, I think you have to speak now. So,
okay. All right. Well, firstly, I'd just like to thank as well the officers who've put a tremendous amount of work into developing the sustainability framework. I've had an opportunity to speak with officers about the process so far, and there's been a huge amount of work that's gone on behind the scenes, and that continues to go on. There's a lot more information yet to be put out about the sustainability framework, including the policy that has been developed that Councillor Contell alluded to. So for all those who are interested in this, be assured that there is a huge amount of work ongoing with this, and that it is also not a static document. It is something that will change and adapt and evolve over time. So this wasn't the only opportunity to have input into what this framework looks like. It is designed to evolve over time. I'd also like to thank the community for their feedback. We had a huge amount of very detailed and thoughtful feedback covering a whole range of aspects of this sustainability framework. And I think the changes that have been made demonstrate that feedback. We've almost doubled the number of actions as a result of the community feedback in the action plan. Naturally, there is a lot of interest in the environmental aspects of this framework, and I thank the Mayor for being supportive of some of my feedback and suggestions on this, because the climate change actions in particular have been of interest to people because of the origins of this document. But it is noted that this is a much broader concept of sustainability than the environment. So some people have had concerns that maybe the environment and climate action will get lost in this sustainability framework given its breadth. And there's also been some feedback that perhaps we should be moving away from a concept of sustainability, which is increasingly being replaced by concepts of restoration and transformation. But I actually think there is a lot of good we can work with here, and the outcomes really depend on how committed we are as a council to what we've set out in this sustainability framework, and how committed we are to continuing to work with the community to do even better when it comes to showing leadership on a whole range of sustainability issues, including climate change. One thing I'd say we've received very strong feedback about was the need to include targets and measurements, and that is something that is being developed. We are currently in the process of revising our carbon emissions reduction targets, and once we have finalised these, this amendment will ensure that they are included in the sustainability framework or the action plan wherever it best fits. But those headline targets will be included, and it will be made public about how we are going to measure our progress and how what benchmarking we'll use, and how we will make this. How we'll communicate this back to the community. There is a need for clear and consistent messaging about what we're aiming to do, how we'll measure it, and I think I'm confident that we'll be able to do that. This amendment assists with that, and also the work that is ongoing in this area will provide that reassurance for the community. This is really essential for transparency and accountability, and my dream is that in the future we'll be able to have a publicly accessible platform rather than traditional annual or semi-annual reports, and people can see almost real time how we're going against our targets. That's something our tech isn't quite up to yet, but we're working on that. And the second aspect of this amendment that I'd really like to highlight is that we had a lot of feedback that the community wanted ongoing input, specifically with regards to environmental sustainability. And it's one of the things over my time in council I've had a huge amount of feedback about. We have a range of community members and organisations who are very passionate. They have a lot of expertise with respect to the environment, and we really need to be tapping into that. And we also need a vehicle to get our messages as a council back out into the community. So by looking at how we might be able to establish some sort of advisory committee, I think that will really assist us with shaping this and strengthening this framework as we go forward.
Great, thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Now we can vote the amendment now, or we can talk about the amendment and then go back to the motion and talk about the motion. So does anybody want to comment on the amendment, or we put the amendment to the vote and then go back to the motion? Vote on the amendment? Yep. Okay, so all those in favour of the amendment? Thank you. Those against? Carried. So now the amendment becomes a substantive motion, and we can talk to the motion if people so wish. And we have Councillor Grisbeck who's reserved the right, and Councillor Contell will close. Does anybody else want to comment on Councillor Mason? You need to unmute Councillor Mason.
Sorry about that. I'm very pleased to support the amendment and the motion. And I'd just like to give a little bit of historical background in terms of disaster risk reduction, which is a primary source of sustainability frameworks and policies, and goes back as far as 1989. The concept of sustainability policy emanated from UN accords to which Australia is a signatory, such as the Hyogo Disaster Risk Reduction Framework and the Sendai Disaster Risk Reduction Framework. And I do urge councillors, the CEO and officers to go to the UN Office of Disaster Risk Reduction website to gain further insight. Sustainability is not an end in itself. We can sometimes sustain mediocre and even inappropriate systems. For example, just think of our public transport system. There is much to improve, though it is sustainable. Sustainability policy mitigates the risks of the many forms of disaster threat. And so our sustainability framework becomes operational. The framework action plan and policy will be subject to the standard processes of review that is found within any project cycle and should be tested against disaster risk and sustainability reduction goals. And will the sustainability development goals be achieved by 2030? At some stage in the future, it's likely that we'll need another framework to work from, one which may be based on restoration or regeneration. So, Mayor Asher, that time has not come yet, but we do need to keep our eyes on the ball. As we face future challenges, the sustainability framework will provide the opportunity to consolidate our current and future approach to addressing climate change, other critical issues such as ongoing pandemic, biodiversity decline, economic and security threats, and the need to think globally while we are strengthening our local capacity and resilience.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other councillors wish to speak on this one? Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of quick points, just in relation to the framework action plan and the policy we're putting into place, which is, again, another huge body of work that's been done by a number of people through the organisation, which we're all very grateful for. I'll just make a couple of quick comments that this council has been quite energetic and quite committed to our environment and all the issues that surround that for a number of years. And we piloted the Future-Proofing Geelong program some years back, and that's been quite successful. And we've sort of aimed at quite ambitious targets with our carbon reduction, which we continue to do so. So I think this council has a pretty good historical platform thus far of what we've done in this particular space. And this particular action plan reinforces that, I guess, with a greater commitment again. I'll just make a couple of quick comments in relation to, for example, the Anarchy Green Organics program, which has been a game changer for us. We're looking at a food organics process that we're exploring at the moment. We see changes in potential container deposit schemes coming on in the near future, which will again have an impact. The waste to energy discussion will continue, and we have a number of organisations that have been quite not so much aggressive, but certainly keen to explore those options in and around our area. So we need to be quite nimble and open-minded to a lot of new technologies that may be out there and judge and assess them accordingly. So this is very much a space that changes daily. And as a council, I think we've been able to adapt quite quickly. And this framework, this new framework action plan, I think will allow us to continue to do that. And again, demonstrate the ability of this council to listen to the community, listen to opportunities and try and put them into action. So ultimately, we've got a much better result for our environment at the end of the day. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Howard. Any other comments? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't be long on this, but just want to comment on the policy. And, after reading the document, it becomes very clear that sustainability is to be considered in everything we do within the city. And when you read some of the ideas or some of the actions that are planned and ongoing, that becomes even clearer. And so I just wanted to highlight that and just mention some of the ideas that are suggested through the community feedback. And they are the solar panels on council buildings, food production and native vegetation planting on nature strips, which gets mentioned every now and then. Support for community gardens, which is a push for that at the moment. And some of the actions that are planned and ongoing are the monitoring the risk brought by climate change and its effects to the Geelong region, the delivery of the Better Bike Connection project, the implementation of the Shared Trails Master Plan, and what's been mentioned already, the advocacy for the development of the container deposit scheme. So some of the actions that I just wanted to mention, and the work with the partnership with the community groups, businesses and other organisations to promote and educate about sustainable practices. And I think education in this space is so important. So I just want to highlight those and again, compliment the officers and to all those and the councillors themselves that have been involved in this. I think it's some really good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Well said. Any other councillors before we go to Councillor Grisbeck? Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. Look, I just wish to re-emphasise one point first, and that is this actually has been a great learning experience for me. When it was first raised to us as councillors, it was all about the environment and just about climate change. And I really want to congratulate the Mayor for her leadership on this particular issue, because she actually educated us to say that it wasn't just about climate change and it wasn't just about the environment. The Mayor tried to find an opportunity to take a split council and put a united front to the broader community of Geelong. And in fact, as you've heard from every single councillor that's spoken tonight, we are now united behind the sustainability framework and the action plan, because we've actually been educated, and that education has been very much led by Mayor Asher to us. I certainly didn't understand that sustainability had a broader definition than just environment. It actually does include economic, it includes social, and includes human, which we talk about in terms of the health and well-being of our communities. And I actually think it's probably one of the most meaningful processes that we've participated in as councillors over the last 8 months, because we've all become educated and understood the importance of this particular work that we have to do as elected officials and show leadership in our community. And we're further learning as we're participating in this sustainability framework process. And I'm really excited by the work that Council's now trying to undertake about working with those people who are left behind, because the economic and social components of sustainability are you're living in a society that actually isn't sustainable when you leave people behind. And certainly the community that I represent in the northern suburbs is still significantly disadvantaged. They are left behind, but I'm really pleased that this particular document is now starting to talk to them in a policy and a framework sense to try to put in place mechanisms, policies and ideas, and encourage the community to come up with ideas about how sustainability is actually taking everybody with us in the environment, in the economy, in the social and the health and wellbeing for the whole of the Geelong region. So, Mayor Asher, no one else has said it as strongly as myself, but you certainly do deserve our congratulations for educating us about this particular issue, and also providing a united mechanism for this council, because a number of our neighbouring councils have actually split on the issue about sustainability and in particular climate change. You have actually come up with a mechanism that's actually brought unity to this council group, and it's actually shown a strong understanding than what all of us had. So thank you very much, Mayor Asher.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. That's very kind of you, but I must say I thank all of you fellow councillors for your patience and your support, and I understand it hasn't necessarily been an easy process, and the same goes for the council officers as well. I think everybody's probably gone through a bit of a learning curve, and we've all made compromises along the way, and obviously felt a little bit of the pain of the challenge of coming up with something that we can all support. So hats off to all of you, and I really appreciate the support that this has had and the work that's been done by the team. So thank you, and for your kind words, Councillor Aitken. Any other councillors to speak on this one before we move to close? Councillor Grisbeck?
Thank you, Mayor Asher, and I think most of it has already been said, so I won't go over again. I'm happy to pass over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Contell to close.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Grisbeck. A lot has already been said, so I won't labour the point, but I do also want to make sure that we do thank all of those interest groups and the community that have helped us shape these important items and policies and plans for council related to our organisational stability. I'd like to thank those who personally contacted me with emails and phone calls. As Councillor Aitken has mentioned, it has been a learning curve for a lot of us, particularly myself. And some of that learning has come from the individuals that have reached out to me and helped me to learn along the way. And equally, I would like to reiterate the applause for yourself, Councillor Stephanie, because you certainly have helped guide us in this framework. And I think it's an excellent document for us to be able to work forward with. I also thank the officers for all the work that they've put in. And so we just need to remember, as has been said, but the reason we're saying it, I guess, so many times tonight is because the message perhaps is not getting through, and in here that lies our challenge, is that we need to remember that whilst the environment is a very important and significant piece of the framework and the action plan and the policy, it's far greater than that. And it really should be a game changer for us, and will be if we are able to communicate it appropriately to the community and make sure that we do obtain feedback from other interest groups and other areas of our community, so that equally we can continue to develop a really solid plan going forward. I think as well, we shouldn't get hung up on the words and get bogged down on one thing, what it should be called, what should be said about it, how it should be referred to. Let's not spin our wheels. Let's really concentrate on the tangible actions, and that'll be the testament to the product of this plan. So with that said, I'll leave it to you, Madam Mayor, to put it to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Contell, and once again, thank you to all those participants who contributed to the feedback as well. So we'll put this one to the vote. All those in favour? Right. Those against? Carried. Thank you. Item 3, draft South Geelong Urban Design Framework.
Asha, can I call a division, please, on the last item before you commence the next issue? Because I think it is important that we record the support of all councillors to it. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Again, all those in favour? Put your hands up again. We have Councillor Mansfield, Councillor Asher, Councillor Harwood, Councillor Mason, Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Nelson, Councillor Manane, Councillor Contell, Councillor Murray, Councillor Aitken and Councillor Grisbeck. Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Those against, there weren't any, so great. Thank you very much. So we will now move on to item 3, the draft South Geelong Urban Design Framework Consultation, to be moved by Councillor Sullivan and seconded by Councillor Murray. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have before us here a document recommendation to seek endorsement to release the draft South Geelong Urban Design Framework for public consultation. The City's Settlement Strategy of 2018 identifies the need for strategic planning work to increase the capacity for development around our train station precincts. Higher density development within our rail corridor is key to deliver on the City's infill development target of 50% where in existing areas by 2047. The draft UDF outlines the background policy context, site analysis, consultation, design principles, concept plans, and implementation plans, which will inform the future use and development of the precinct. The draft UDF also nominates both the South Geelong Station and Moorabool Street precincts as key development areas and an expansion of the increased housing diversity area in the South Geelong Station, making that range from 400 metres to 800 metres. The duplication of the railway line from South Geelong to Bourne Ponds includes a second platform as an opportunity to enhance both pedestrian and bicycle access to the railway station via a pedestrian crossing connecting to Bellarine Street. A major component of this is the development of the South Geelong Station car park and construction of a multi-deck car park, which is in the long-term vision for this area. This also includes mixed-use development being envisioned to follow the South Geelong Station precinct, which includes medium to high density residential development, retail and commercial uses. Now, medium to high density residential development is also envisioned for along Moorabool Street, with commercial uses supported on the ground level of this. And this is a fantastic opportunity to create a proper link between our CBD and our river. Public consultation on the UDF is proposed for a period of 8 weeks. Now, consultation on the proposal will be designed with the current situation of COVID-19 in mind. And I cannot stress enough just how important this is and how it is at the forefront of Council's mind. We want to garner as much community input as possible. This is difficult under the current circumstances, but we are determined to make sure that happens appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Murray.
Yes, and thank you to Councillor Sullivan for those words. I've made some notes, and I don't want to go back over what's just been spoken, but there's two key words in this to me, the draft South Geelong Urban Design Framework Consultation. The first is draft. It's a draft only, and it's the first draft we're going to see, and consultation, which is so important in relation to this draft. This is certainly a huge piece of work for the South Geelong, Moorabool Street, Cardinia Park precinct area. And you can imagine if you're a resident and you weren't aware of this and you saw this perhaps in the advertiser the last couple of days, you might think that panic might set in. And indeed, I don't know if there's a shot there of Moorabool Street in what it may look like in years to come. But it's a draft, and it's the what's been prepared and put out there comes about from consultation already. So the South Geelong and the Moorabool Street precincts are the key development sites or the areas. There's the Barwon Water Depot, and Barwon Water being a stakeholder itself. So this offers a unique opportunity for the high density and mixed use housing, the duplication of the railway line to Warn Ponds, the introduction of a second platform eventually. Councillor Sullivan has mentioned the car park, the long-term vision, we're talking 10 years for the car park. And there's 753 off-street parks there at the moment. There's about 1,000 on-street restricted parking places. And the Department of Transport has identified the potential requirement for another 300 at South Geelong. So certainly looking down the track, there's going to be a huge change to that railway station. And it's expected to cater for the areas of change in the housing type of the density. And what's important to me, the significant number of properties that have heritage overlay, they won't be affected. The IHDA goes from 400 metres to 800 metres, which indeed takes in Cardinia Park. And I think what forms a huge part to this piece is the Cardinia Park master plan, which we've been told will come before us early next year, and the council taking control of that master plan in conjunction with other stakeholders and indeed the trust. So we await to see what that piece of work brings to us. And if you have a look at the plans, there is certainly a new entry perhaps to Cardinia Park from Moorabool Street that's part of the plan. Obviously, if you read it, you'd have concerns, and if you're a resident about parking or perhaps the building heights, movement around South Geelong, street beautification, anything indeed in relation to this draft. We want to hear from the residents out there. We want to hear from stakeholders. This goes out for a period of 8 weeks. So have your say on this. It's an exciting project, and we want to hear as much as possible from the residents out there. Moorabool Street itself, we've seen the boulevard type expectations that it could be in years to come, which I think looks spectacular. Whether other people agree with that, have your say on that. The types of residential facilities within Moorabool Street itself. So I might wind it up there, but as I say, it's important now for people to have their say on this. It's a great document. It's a good read, and as I say, we'll see what comes of it in years down the track. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Well said. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you. And I think that's from Councillor Murray, his words are it is draft and it is up for consultation, because I think when I first saw it, I did think that we are going to probably get some wild and ranging views about from the local residents that are living there, thinking that these sorts of things would be next door to them, etc. So I'm really keen to hear from not just the residents, but the people that use that space. There are a lot of people that use Kardinia Park. There are a lot of people that use the station. And there are a lot of people that use, the top end of Mirabel Street. So I think we would like to hear from the residents, yes, but we'd also like to hear from the people that use that space. So I'll reserve my views on whether it's a good or bad plan until we sort of hear more from the residents. But on first look, when you think about 6 or 7 stories of buildings, I guess we probably need to move with the times a little, but I'm just a little concerned about some of those aspects. So I'll be guided by hearing from the community on that one.
Thanks, Councillor Grisbeck. Any other councillors like to comment on this one? Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll probably might reiterate a little more on the back of Councillor Murray's comments. One of the things that concerns me with these plans, that they are quite comprehensive and there's a lot to take in, and we've seen examples of this just this year with the UDF for Paco and Gordon Avenue. We've seen it before with the Better Bike Connections, is that trying to get the community engaged in the process and understanding the breadth and width of what potentially could be with a plan such as this is extremely difficult. And sometimes you need some champions in the community, like we've seen with the Paco and Gordon Avenue UDF, to allow people to get a better understanding of what's involved and the intricacies of a plan such as this. Because after 8 weeks, it comes back to council at some point in time, and as councillors we vote on it, but it's not delivered then for the next 5 years plus, sometimes 10, 15, 20 years. And what becomes reality is not necessarily what may have been first imagined or thought when you're looking at it on paper. And so there's a lot to consider here, and what we need to do is our darndest to engage the community in trying to allow them to understand just how much of an impact this will have on the community. Lots of it will be positive, no doubt, but all the same, there will be impacts that may affect, depending on whose lens you look through, in a negative manner as well. And so that's the point that I want to make here tonight, is that whilst we've got it down for 8 weeks at the moment, should we feel, particularly the ward councillors, that maybe hasn't got through the community enough in the next 8 weeks, then we need to call it early and make sure we do give the community the opportunity to understand what's in this plan and how it may impact them going forward. There's no doubt that there's some excellent initiatives. We've had councillors talk about some of those, so I won't go through them tonight, but more so the importance of getting the message out to the community.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Contell. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. As all my fellow councillors have emphasised so far, this is really about putting this document out to the community. We want to hear your feedback as one of the ward councillors. I'm particularly interested in hearing from my community about what they think of this plan. It is, as has been highlighted, a very comprehensive and detailed plan, and it is as Councillor Murray has said, it is a draft, and we are looking to hear from you. The principles behind it, I think, are demonstrate where we're trying to head with a lot of these developments, which is about ensuring that more people have access to the services they need, or connections between different places closer to where they live, so we can get more people. That's the rationale behind more density. You have more people living close to spaces. They can access them easily by foot or by bike, or accessing them in their local area. And I think there's some real merit to that principle, but how we go about it is the important thing. We have to respect, the existing communities and residents within those spaces, and heritage values, and a whole range of other considerations. The train station precinct is one that I'm very familiar with, having been a regular train user, and South Geelong station being my local station. I definitely believe that there's scope for some significant improvement to that area, and this plan provides us with, some way forward with respect to that. But we do need to get this right for the community, and so I'm very interested in hearing feedback from the residents. It's incumbent on all of us as councillors as well to try and get the message out there, engage with the community, and try and get the best feedback we can, so we can make the right decision on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Any other comments on this one? Councillor Manane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this report, really does provide us with a critical piece of planning towards the development of our city, and as already been said, it's about putting the ideas and the concepts out to the public to get some feedback as to what they think of it, and also to get their views and ideas, because we know that our city has got planned population growth of very substantial numbers in the next 30, 40, 50 years, and we'll need to have the ideas and the planning to cope with that. And so it's pieces of work like this that go towards that plan and subsequently provide the development of the city. And we also know that the answer will be to that growth will be a combination of newly created suburban areas, but also infill. And the infill of our existing suburbs is obviously one of the more difficult things to do, but nevertheless, it is going to be part of where life's going to be in the next decades. And I think that, getting that right is going to have a major effect on both the past and the future character of our city and the character of those suburbs. But it's also going to be part of the functionality of the city that we get them right, so that we can live as a much heavily populated city in the manner in which we want to live. So it's critically we get pieces of work like this right, and that is exactly why we've put it out to the community for consultation and ideas. And one of the key pieces in this piece of work is around the influence that the rail has to play in the future of the functionality of the city. And I'd put it to you that currently the Geelong Railway Station and the South Geelong Railway Station are critical pieces of infrastructure for Melbourne businesses. What we need them to become is critical pieces of infrastructure for Geelong businesses and the employees of Geelong businesses. We'll know that we've got success when people in their droves are hopping off the South Geelong station and going to work here in Geelong. At the moment, it serves as a great asset for Melbourne, more so than Geelong. And as we know, the travelling population will soon have to become accustomed to multiple forms of transport for the single journey. It'll be drive and then walk, or drive and then ride, or ride and walk. We'll be doing a multiple for the one journey. And so making this rail station an integral part of the future of Geelong is part of the overall development plan for our city. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Manay. Councillor Aitken, did you put your hand up before? Yes, Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. Look, I think the community watching and listening to the discussion tonight does need to understand why we're actually talking so much about this particular area. It actually has got the potential to be the most livable part of the inner city in Geelong, and that's simply because to the northern part of it is the hospital precinct, Geelong Hospital and St John of God, and to the south you have the Barwon River, and to your west you have Cardinia Park, and to your east you have the Geelong South Geelong railway station. So with those four icons, this actually has the potential to be one of the most livable parts of the CBD of Geelong, because you can't live around the Geelong railway station, and council's building its own new administrative headquarters around that, so you can't put apartment complexes near the Geelong railway station. You've got the Latrobe terrace that's breaking up the back of the Geelong railway station. You don't have that at South Geelong. You've actually got a great opportunity to be a residential community and actually use that piece of transport infrastructure. People don't understand, but you actually can walk from that area to the hospitals, which is something that certainly people will factor in as they age, and it certainly has a great opportunity for those that need those services to live near them and not rely on transport. And of course, you've got the great icon of Cardinia Park for those people that have an interest in the Geelong Football Club and want to actually go to the 8 games that are held there. This is actually the best part in Geelong to actually live there, so you just can walk to that significant piece of infrastructure, which we all know is the most significant regional stadium in Australia. And, of course, then you've got the beauty of the Barwon River to the south of you, which I'm certainly looking forward to water in the new northern and western growth zones, in particular around Finesford. But if you live in this area now, you have the beauty of the Barwon River as part of the boundaries of this particular part of the city of Greater Geelong. So that's actually why the planners have got an interest in it. This has the potential to be our most livable residential area within Geelong. We do have to work on the transport links for that particular area. I hope this development framework gives an opportunity to be able to have trackless trams going up Moorabool Street, and take full advantage of those new transport modes that exist, and take advantage of the fact that the South Geelong station is the train station that you can live next to. You can't do it at North Geelong, can't do it at Geelong, but you certainly got a great opportunity to do it at South Geelong. And that's why there's so much planning interest in this particular precinct area, Mayor Asher.
Well put, Councillor Aitken. Very true. Any other councillors like to speak to this one? Councillor Sullivan to close.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to all my councillors for their good words on the topic. It's a topic of great passion. Just once again, echo the same sentiment we've all said. It's going to have consultation, 8 weeks. It will be amended with the current situation in mind, so please do not, any residents watching, please do not fear that your voice will not be heard on the matter, whether it's online, person to person, we will make it work. So with that, I'm happy to move the motion at that.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Well done. Okay, item 4 is Amendment C339, the Lower Barwon and Lower Moorabool Flood Investigation, the Lara Flood Study and other flooding overlay changes. Again, to be moved by Councillor Sullivan, I believe, and Councillor Mason to second. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We now have a recommendation to seek council support to prepare and exhibit Amendment C339, which revises the flood overlay, special building overlay, and land subject to inundation controls across the municipality. The amendment proposes to implement the recommendations of the Lower Barwon and Lower Moorabool flood investigation, as well as the Lara flood study. This is together with the application of remaining areas of the Bellarine Peninsula to Corio Bay local coastal hazard assessment. So it also includes properties in Barwon Heads, Ocean Groves, Wellington and Conowari. The Lower Barwon and Lower Moorabool flood investigation and the Lara flood study were prepared by water technology, coastal, and environmental consultants, with the Lower Barwon and Lower Moorabool investigation being a joint project of the Corangamite Catchment Management Authority and the City of Greater Geelong. The majority of the affected properties are already subject to Greater Geelong Planning Scheme flood overlays, so we're building on the good work that's already been done here. Now, the mapping changes introduced reflect more accurate flood risk assessments that are currently in place, including a reduction in the assessment risk for a number of properties, as well as a removal of controls from large areas currently identified as subject to inundation. So also putting something new, we're also revising what was there in the first place. We're not just adding layers upon layers here. Now, with that, I'm happy to move the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Well said. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon. Right, okay. So now we have Councillor Mason. I beg your pardon. I was still in the last item. I'm planning looking at you.
Mayor Ash, you didn't really make a mistake because I think Councillor Sullivan said it all anyway.
He covered it. It sounded like...
But I will just add a little bit. And really, this is going out for exhibition, and we're recommending that the amendment goes to the Minister for this exhibition. I'd just like to sort of add that climate change implies a sea level rise of 0.8 metres in coastal flooding, and this planning is done. What hasn't been done is extra work on rainfall intensity in the riverine areas where also there is extra flooding and floodplain flooding events. Even though the total annual rainfall is expected to decrease, because of the greater intensity of rainfall, there will be greater flash floods from time to time. And this planning really fine-tunes it very well, and it will significantly reduce the need to obtain planning permits for the development on land within the respective overlays. And as Councillor Sullivan said before, it really does reflect more accurately the flood risk assessments that are currently in place, and that these will be reduced because of the more accurate work that's been done. So I commend the motion as well.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. Look, my only comments to focus on the speed at which the council officers are actually implementing recommendations from the Lara flood study, and I'm really impressed by that speed. In fact, it's nearly as good as Brad Close kicking his goal within 23 seconds on Monday night. The Lara flood study was actually only adopted at a recent meeting, but we're actually now tonight putting out amendments associated with those recommendations. So I really want to congratulate the planning staff for their preparation and doing that in particular, because it's just unheard of and unprecedented to have the organisation responding so quickly. So congratulations to Martin, in particular our CEO, and Gareth and our planning team, that they're straight onto it with this issue. So I'm very impressed with that, Mayor Esher.
Great, good news. Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Any other councillors like to talk to this one? Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you. And I just wanted to touch base and say that I think this will be exhibited again, so it is another opportunity for the community to, have their say in relation to this process. This process can, affect people in different ways. So it can affect their properties and it can affect their neighbours. So I would be keen, if people are interested in it, to please, keep an eye on the exhibit of that amendment to the planning scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grisbeck. Good point. Any other comments on this one? Councillor Sullivan to close, properly this time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will just add that if this is approved now, all affected property owners will receive a letter advertising them of the changes when the amendment is publicly exhibited later this year. The proposed amendment will also be displayed on the Geelong Australia website, and submissions will be received by the council. We may also pass them on to an independent council to have absolute transparency. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. So all those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Item 5 is Gazapur Road, Warren Ponds, a footpath construction SRC 353, finalisation of the scheme, to be moved by Councillor Nelson and seconded by Councillor Mason. Thank you, Councillor Nelson. You need to go unmute, Councillor Nelson. Can you unmute?
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Yes, I certainly get all the good ones. The special charge scheme out at Gazapur Road, Warren Ponds. It's 23 to 29 Gazapur Road. It's a small section of that area that the locals all know very well. A lot of students out there that walk across the road to Deakin Uni. So this is a missing link, you could say. So it's about 83 metres of property on 23 to 29 Gazapur Road in Warren Ponds at a total cost of $154,000. Quite an expensive project, but as you can see, it's not just a footpath. It's also a road widening and a bus stop as well. So quite imperative work that needed to be done. As we all know that people that use Gazapur Road, it needs to be widened. So we've certainly widened that bottom section down there at 23 to 29 Gazapur Road, and I'll leave it for other councillors to have their say.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. And just to add to Councillor Nelson's comments, property owners will have the ability to nominate a payment plan and may access our hardship policy if necessary. Also, there's to be a bus stop installed at the same time, which will be at no cost to the property owners, but it's useful to do this project in concurrency. Just a little detail, the total cost of the project is about $150,000, of which there will be about $19,282, which will be applicable to the landowners. Other than that, I think Councillor Nelson said it all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other comments on this one? Okay, back to Councillor Sullivan to close. Councillor Nelson to close, I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, this road, obviously that missing link has now been done. As I said, the road's been widened. There's still a lot more work to go as you go up Gazapur Road, but council officers are working on that. And in subsequent budgets, there will be more road widening for Gazapur Road, because it is quite a dangerous road and cars have to park on the nature strip, and it is quite dangerous. So it's a work in progress, that's for sure.
Okay. Happy to put this one to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6 is tender T000053, LED lighting and smart control delivery, supply of street lighting hardware, to be moved by Councillor Aitken and seconded Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mayor Escher. Look, it's my honour as Chair of the Finance to actually be associated with this particular item. What it is, it's actually a $5 million tender to do the first phase of energy efficient lighting projects within the City of Greater Geelong. Under our sustainability framework, we've actually got an ambition to try and reduce carbon emissions within the City of Greater Geelong. And we have already completed our city's zero carbon building program, which delivered LED lighting and upgrades to our city sports, recreation and cultural facilities throughout Geelong. This is our next phase for the City of Greater Geelong in our commitments, where we've got a total of 25,000 street lights throughout the City of Greater Geelong, which we've committed to put LED lighting opportunities in them. This particular tender is for 15,000 of those 25,000 lights for a total commitment of $5 million, 4.94, but $5 million. And one of the exciting things about this technology, Mayor Asher and my fellow councillors, we're actually going to have remote dimming switches so that we'll actually be able to increase the luminance of the lights and decrease them as well too. So that actually can have some energy saving benefits for the community as well too, because it really means we can actually find the right level of lighting for a particular area. And that's actually going to be a unique feature of these new LED lights. They're going to have these remote dimming switching opportunities for them as well too. Some of the really exciting statistics associated with this tender is that it's actually going to result in a 60% reduction in energy for the City of Greater Geelong with these 25,000 lights being transferred to LED. That's huge, which is a total of 8,664 tonnes of CSO carbon dioxide from the City of Greater Geelong. So I'm really proud of this investment and the return that the community is going to get from it. And once again, it's another example of our action plan under our sustainability framework, where we're looking for opportunities as the council how we can address sustainability in our community. And this is a fantastic example of that for the community to embrace and the council. But don't give me the dimmer switch, because I'll probably turn them really up bright.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Councillor Grisbeck, next.
Thank you. And Councillor Aitken, we've got bright enough lights as it is, so we would like that dimmer switch in some places. Look, thank you. And I've got Councillor Aitken has, perfectly summed it up. But this phase one of this work, which we're putting out to tender, which we're hopefully approving tonight, will include the replacement of about 15,000 of the existing street lights in most of the regions with a Category P light. So the document is very thorough. The tender has been well done by the officers, and we've got a really good outcome. So thank you, Mayor Asher.
Great, well said, Councillor Grisbeck. Anyone else want to comment? Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. I'd also just like to thank officers for this one. I know this has been in the pipeline for some time. It was something that had been flagged as during my time as the chair of the environment portfolio. This is going to make a significant contribution to our emissions reduction targets. And help us to reach those along with our power purchasing agreement. It is worth keeping in mind that the city's emissions, our own business, is only about 1% of what the whole municipality emits. So even if we were to get down to zero emissions, 99% of the municipality's emissions are coming from other areas, residents and businesses. So I think one of the key, this is a great example of the city using technology and to reduce not only our carbon emissions but our costs. But this is something where I think we can be looking at how we can partner with the community to facilitate them to do the same. If we can get more businesses, community and organisations, residents changing over their lighting systems and looking at more energy efficient technologies, we can make a much bigger difference to our emissions reductions as a whole municipality. But really great to see this happening. It's something I'd received a lot of feedback about from various community members. When are we going to get on with our LED lights program? So it's great to see that rolling out. Again, thanks to our officers for their work on this one.
Great, thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to also quickly voice my support of this project going on here. This is a substantial investment. And, 15,000 fittings, smart control, taking down our energy consumption of those items by 60%, thousands of tonnes of CO2. This is a topic that's often brought to council because people don't actually often see what the council is doing. But this is a great example. How could you get much more visual in the steps that council is taking than the actual light that we used to see in the evenings. So fantastic project, and just happy to lend my support.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, most things have been said, but I referred to this report when we were talking about the sustainability framework and our action plan. And this is one of those tangible programs, as Councillor Mansfield has already suggested, that will go a long way to helping us reduce our emissions by 50% from the 2014-15 levels. It's part of our City Zero Carbon Buildings program, which started in 2018. And whilst this is related to LED lighting, there's a lot of great work that council are doing in this space when it comes to automated building control systems, upgrades to heating and cooling systems at some of our key sites, and also a lot of work in the energy solar panel space. So these are the great initiatives that we really need to be promoting, because they are real tangible outcomes that have an economic impact on our sustainability, but also an environment impact. So a great combination of the two.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Contell. Any other comments on this one? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this certainly presents an opportunity for the city to be a leader in this technology department. And I just wanted to highlight what the research says in relation to LED technology, and that it recognises that quality street lighting improves road safety, and particularly white light provided by LEDs. It makes people feel safer in the public domain at night, and can be more of a deterrent to antisocial behaviour. By implementing LED and smart control lighting, it will help community members of all gender and age groups feel safer on our roads and where they live. So this is indeed a great result. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Any other councillors wish to talk on this one? Back to Councillor Aitken to close.
Nothing further to add, Mayor Asher. Thank you.
Excellent. So we'll put this very exciting project to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Well done. Okay, item 7, we've got the revocation of flood-prone area designation of new lots at Glenlee Estate this time, stage 1, to be moved by Councillor Contell and seconded by Councillor Nelson. Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, tonight's report is to revoke Council's designation of flood-affected land, which was adopted in December 2006. And as we're aware, it's Council's statutory obligation under the building regs that we need to designate land as liable to flood where it's reasonably known to be prone to flooding. And certainly back then, this piece of area, or this piece of land, which is at the Glenlee estate, was identified as being prone to flood in a 1 in 100 year rainfall. However, since then, there's been much work done in this space, and council engineers have reassessed the internal drainage solutions which have been put in place through road construction, through earthworks that can contain potential floodwaters from that 1 in 100 year potential rainfall, and they're able to now contain them on the reserve. So as such, what we're asking for today is that council actually revoke the council designated flood-affected overlay that was put in place in 2006 and open it up to standard process.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Contell. Councillor Nelson. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor Nelson.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I didn't have the screen up. I'm just looking at my notes on the screen rather than myself. As Councillor Contell said, it's the revocation of 274 to 280 Reserve Road, Charlemont, but it's now classed as all in circuit. So there's quite a few properties along there, so they'll be very happy that their insurance bills will be less because they're not in a flood zone. So that's good news for them, for those new homeowners, new home buyers down in Charlemont.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Any other councillors wish to talk on this one? Okay, back to Councillor Contell to close. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm speechless, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. I don't think there's much more to add. As Councillor Nelson has said, this is a good outcome because we know just how much passion and emotion can be associated with flood overlays. I must admit, I haven't seen that come to fruition during this term, but as Councillor Nelson and Harwood would be well aware, we have had our challenges in this space over the last decade because it does have a big impact on residents and those building homes and developing land when we introduce a flood overlay. So I think it will be a welcome outcome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Contell. So all those in favour, put this one to the vote. Thank you. Those against, carried. Okay, so item 8 is the 2019 to 20 borrowing provision, which is confidential. So can I please have a mover and seconder? Moved Councillor Aitken, seconded Councillor Grisbeck to move this into confidential. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against, carried. Okay, so now we get to the exciting part of the Section C notices of motion. And first up we have a notice of motion from Councillor Mason on virtual meetings, the Local Government Act 2020. So may I have a mover and seconder to consider this motion? Moved by Councillor Mason, I'm presuming, and seconded by Councillor Grisbeck. Thank you. Councillor Mason. You need to unmute, Councillor Mason.
Dear, oh dear, I'm very sorry. Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. It just so happens that we're attending a virtual meeting tonight, and we really are very much aware of the current increased danger of community transmission of the COVID-19 virus. When the Victoria Government passed the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures Act 2020 on 23rd of April, it gave us the right to participate in meetings such as this until the 1st of November. This has certainly been applied to meetings such as this on occasions. And though we really do all prefer to hold face-to-face meetings, it's now very clear that we may need to operate remotely through virtual meetings from time to time. Not only that, Mayor Asher, it's incumbent upon us to show leadership in regards to community transmission. And we don't want to be faced with the dilemma of feeling unwell and concurrently needing to attend a council meeting to ensure the best decision is made by a full council. So it's important for us to stay at home if we're unwell and to continue to attend and fully participate in a meeting from a remote location while other councillors might be meeting face to face. So this motion really does provide authority for us to advocate widely for an extension to the Omnibus Bill and to support a hybrid model as well. And we do desire to communicate this to the Minister and to submit a motion to the MAV State Council also. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Mayor Asher, and thank you to Councillor Mason for popping this notice of motion on today. I think one of the benefits of having online meetings is because we are necessarily in a pandemic where we can't always meet together. But there are some other benefits of being able to meet virtually or in a hybrid model, and those are, if we are unable to attend the chamber, but we have maybe some caring responsibilities, or we have have maybe a leg injury that we can't drive. And I think that there are going to be some real opportunities for this if we were able to extend the provision of meeting online further past November this year. I think the opportunity is always, and the choice should always be in the chamber if we can, to allow that community engagement, to allow those questions from the floor, and to allow the community to really see the workings and the inner governance of council. But in some saying we could have a hybrid model where most councillors could be in the chamber, and there is real an opportunity that if somebody is not able to attend the chamber, that doesn't discriminate them by being part of the council decision-making process. And that's what I'm hoping for, that we can do this advocation to the local government minister, and that we can also do this through the MAV. And I'm sure there are many councils across Victoria that would like to have the opportunity to do this. And, some of the big rural councils, actually have to travel quite far to get to a chamber. And so this might provide an opportunity that more people might want to put their hand up to run for council if they knew that there was these opportunities to Skype in or Zoom in or whatever opportunity that whatever council decides the platform that we could use. Opportunity is that this is provided that we can make sure that the community still has these forums to Zoom in from home. So live streaming is also really important. City of Greater Geelong have been doing live streaming for over a year now, if not a year and a half. So, and I think it's really important that people can go back and look at these live streams, can really understand what the council's on about in their own time. So this is a really good notice of motion. Thank you, Councillor Mason. I know you've worked with the governance team on getting the motion right, and I really think that this is an important part of our advocacy work. Thank you, Mayor Asher.
Excellent. Well said, Deputy Mayor Grisbeck. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mayor Asher, and thank you, Councillor Mason, for putting this motion forward. I think it's certainly prudent, given it's becoming clear that COVID will probably be with us for some time, and having this option available will be important going forward. As Councillor Mason has highlighted, we've been advised that, we mustn't be going to work if we're unwell. And in the past, we probably wouldn't have thought twice about turning up to a council meeting if we had a bit of a scratchy throat or a sniffly nose. Whereas, at the moment, that's really not something we can afford to be doing, and potentially putting our fellow councillors and staff at risk. So having the option to have a hybrid model it would be really valuable, I think, for those circumstances, and also for the circumstances that Councillor Grisbeck has highlighted. I've certainly experienced, many occasions where the option to, you had the option being available to call in remotely would have made life a lot easier. I've experienced, I've had two little kids join our family during my time in council, and I've had a broken ankle at one point as well and couldn't drive. So all of those circumstances made it much more difficult to come in. And while I was able to do it, it would have been great to have the option to participate remotely. And more broadly, I think this will just make council a much more inclusive and modern space for people. So, and the other thing is, we're a big municipality. A lot of our councillors have to, travel a significant distance, and that has impacts on their families and their work, their lives. And there may be occasions where we only need to have a very brief meeting, and bringing all the staff and all the councillors in to have a meeting, may not be the best use of everyone's time and resources. So I think it opens up a whole range of possibilities beyond COVID. But I really thank Councillor Mason for putting this motion forward, and I'm hopeful that our advocacy on this one will get some traction, and we'll see this being something we can continue to do into the future.
Excellent. Spot on, Councillor Mansfield. Well said. Any other councillors want to talk to Councillor Mason? Was there a hand up? Councillor Murray? Yep, great. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Councillor Mason for bringing this before us. I'm supportive of it. And for the reasons that I think everyone has spoken about. If we didn't have this virtual meeting, Councillor Mansfield, we would never have met your two children. So that's one another way of looking at it. And I just wonder, down the track or going forward with this, if it's supported tonight, whether we will ever have a full meeting in chamber, because there could be one or two councillors who just may refuse for whatever reason to go to have a council meeting in chamber and would just prefer, because it suited them, just to be at home. So that is one of the, I think, the slight negative, Councillor Mason, in relation to this, because we don't know what may happen down the track, and a councillor may just refuse to go to City Hall. And can they use this motion to their benefit? But anyway, look, it is good council policy to have the option. We just hope that the option isn't used in perhaps a negative way. But I'm supportive of this motion, so thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Murray. Any other comments on this one before I go back to Councillor Mason? I also commend you, Councillor Mason, for this one. This is terrific, and I particularly support the hybrid model for all the reasons that have been said. I think we need to move with the times, and this is a really good suggestion. So well done. Thank you. Councillor Mason, to close.
Thank you, Mayor Asher, and I'd just like to thank all my colleagues for supporting this. And I'd also like to make special comment to the governance people who assisted in the preparation of this motion. I'm sure further down the track, Councillor Murray here, if anybody's abusing this great step forward, we'll find another notice of motion to find a way to control it. But I do take note of what you've said. I do look forward to taking this to the MAV at some stage down the track, and it is a really great opportunity for us to show some leadership, how we can work from home, and we will be reducing the risks to ourselves and to the community during various times that are probably going to be in front of us. So we will be technology challenged from time to time, and we've got a lot to learn, but I think we're taking the right step forward, and thank you for supporting this motion.
Great, thank you, Councillor Mason. On that note, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Well done. Next notice of motion is from Councillor Aitken. It's a transparency. It's the establishment of a public register of meetings of property developers with key management personnel and senior officers and or councillors of the City of Greater Geelong. So may I please have a mover and seconder? Mover, Councillor Aitken, and seconded, Councillor Grisbeck. Thank you, Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. Look, it's quite fascinating. When I first raised this proposition, I actually thought it would engender more opposition. But in fact, I've actually been really encouraged by the support that I've actually received from members of the community. And in particular, I've actually been really enthused by some prominent developers have actually contacted me within the City of Greater Geelong, and they've actually commended the proposition that's being put forward. And they've actually given me confidence that it is the right type of thing in terms of policy and governance for the council as a group to consider and show leadership within the local government sphere in Victoria. What's fascinating, some of the comments that they made to me was they did endorse that that property developers do receive the greatest financial benefit from decisions that councillors make and delegated decisions that officers make. And in point that one developer wanted me to emphasise, and I do agree with it, they actually said to me that 99.9% of all property developers are actually honourable people. And I agree with that statement as well too. Unfortunately, is the the bad eggs in councils, it's the bad eggs in council administrations, and it's the bad eggs in property developers that have led to the examples of the most current one is the city of Casey, where the council, after an inquiry, was sacked. What the intention of this particular motion and request for the investigation into establishing some type of policy, or in particular a public register of public property developer meetings held within the city of Greater Geelong, is to be able to have public transparency of these meetings and those relationships. And I can't think of any other way how that can occur without having a register of those particular meetings. And I believe it will serve as a permanent reminder to everybody that's participating in that process that they have got a higher level of governance and responsibility when dealing with property developers and this particular responsibility. Some of the things that we are going to have to consider, and in that it has to be practical, and it has to be meaningful. If it turns out that the investigation from the CEO and our governance team suggests that it's not practical, it will be meaningless about what the intention of what's been undertaken. We do have to define what is meant by property developers. We do have to define what constitutes a meeting. And we may even consider, as a council group, introducing a threshold in terms of financial interest to trigger when something possibly could be put onto the public register. And ultimately, as what one of the developers said to me, he actually said, why wouldn't you do it? What do you have to fear? What do you have to hide by not participating in this open and transparent process? And look, the motion shouldn't frighten people. It shouldn't frighten developers. Geelong actually is a very good place to do business. People do make a lot of money in Geelong from undertaking business and investment. But I think this just adds a layer of governance that we could be proud of in Geelong, that we're actually establishing something that is a leader in Victoria.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. And I decided not to reserve my right because I think, I'd just like to say it up front that this is asking the CEO to investigate and to undertake an investigation as to what they think. And this is a real opportunity for us to get a report back to council before the election. It's really an interesting piece of policy that we're looking to bring in, because I think there is some real unknowns about who speaks to whom and what about. And I think that the opportunity that was given to me for running for council and being elected was on transparency itself. And I think this is a real example of what transparency to the public can be. I'm really keen to be able to set the limits and the guidelines and those types of things that need to be reported and those that don't, to be very clear and very in plain English, to able for councillors, for staff and for the developers to understand where this happens. This involves a lot of money, and this involves a lot of developer contributions. This involves a lot of financial interests in dealings that sometimes we've seen in other councils can take council astray, and it can force the government to do things that we necessarily don't want to happen in Geelong. So thank you, Councillor Aitken, for putting this forward, and I totally support this notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, whilst I think I understand the intent of Councillor Aitken's notice of motion, but I do still harbour some concern with the message that this may be sending and the perception that it creates, whether it's intentional or not. And so whilst some may be fearful of asking questions or talking to this notice of motion, I'm certainly not. But at face value, one could be forgiven if they were thinking that meeting with developers, which we're yet to establish what a developer actually is some sort of a crime or is unsavoury, and that developers should be scrutinised far greater than any other business person or organisational member that may not identify themselves as a developer. And it's simply not fair if that is the way that it's perceived, because it's an unfair categorisation of an industry that really contributes significantly and shapes our community, our economy, creates huge amounts of employment. And I know that that's not being questioned here, but it is in fact developers right here, right now, that are currently helping us as a nation crawl out of the financial burdens of COVID-19. And I also have some concern how we will establish who is a developer. You know, is it a husband and a wife building some apartments that they might rent out? Is it a builder building a shed that he may use for his own use or his business, or is it an earth mover preparing a site cut? And then how do we establish what is and what isn't a meeting with a developer? In my own situation as the managing director of a equipment dealership, I'm in fact talking to developers daily from all over Australia. So does that constitute having to register those conversations? Because I certainly won't be doing that because it will be against the code of conduct of my employer. So the fact that I'm even asking these questions, concerns me that may be a scene that all of a sudden there's something to hide or that I'm against the notice of motion. I'm not necessarily against getting back a report, but I will be looking upon this to see how those matters are managed and how this register will be able to work in an operational sense, because regardless of who councillors meet with and who officers meet with, bad behaviour, inappropriate behaviour, dishonest behaviour and practices is wrong regardless of who they are. So my concern is that we're focusing in on one industry rather than so many others that we deal with on a daily basis that we could be behaving inappropriately and badly with. So I'm not against it. I will support asking the CEO to come back to us with a report, but I did want to flag some of those concerns that I have, and I asked the CEO to consider that very carefully when looking at this, because some of us actually work in an industry where dealing with developers happens on a daily and hourly basis.
Thanks, Councillor Contell. Very well articulated. Councillor Murray?
Look, my concerns are very similar to Councillor Contell. I'm supportive of the notice of motion, but there are, and still will be, even I think when the report comes back from the CEO, a lot of unanswered questions. And we just so many grey areas in this, I think. We've spoken about what the definition of a meeting is. I mean, there's so many times and opportunities that, is it catching up for a coffee? Is it catching up for a beer, socialising at a local sporting club where there's a developer and you've been friends for years? Does that constitute a meeting? Where, for 2 minutes of that, a couple of hours, you might actually talk work just for that short period of time. Does that constitute a meeting? You're bumping into someone walking down the street and the conversation comes up. It's so ambiguous, and I don't think the CEO can come back with something, as Councillor Grisbeck has said, in plain English, because it just won't be plain English. And then there's a definition of what a developer is. You know, there's the husband and wife who subdivide a block, and, you know, are they included? Or if they're not included, why aren't they included if there's an actual meeting with a councillor? So there's a lot to consider. I understand why Councillor Aiken has brought it before us, and I'll be really interested to see what the CEO comes back with, because, and again, it offers up sort of the unhealthy connotations. Oh, a councillor is meeting with the developer, when in fact that's not the case. It's not an unhealthy connotation that we should be looking at these sort of meetings. But and even the fact that this has been brought before us and it's out in the public domain now, it seems to have that negative connotation about it, which is simply shouldn't be the case. You know, we've got our own code of conduct that you know, should be the protection we need. The question could be asked, you know, how much more protection do we need? But look, I'm supportive. I understand why it's been before us, and it's good governance. So I'll be interested to see the report.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Manane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I've got to say that I'm not real comfortable with this notice of motion, and a lot for the reasons that have already been spoken to by past speakers, because council by its very nature is an organisation that seeks feedback from the community in every major decision that we make. And consequently, you know, we do have very close working relationships with all segments of the community, including developers. And overwhelmingly, that engagement is extremely positive. And I include in that engagements with businesses generally, of which developers are only one type of business. You know, examples of the other segments of the community with which we seek engagement, depending on the nature of the decisions that we're considering from time to time, we seek engagement with large institutions, Deakin University, Avalon Airport, etc. We seek engagements from other organisations, G21, the Chamber, Committee for Geelong, etc., etc. You know, we speak daily regularly with local politicians, both state and federal. We're speaking with community clubs all the time and members of the community. I mean, you know, in all of these cases, we're asking for engagement. They're expressing views to us. They're giving us their opinion, and in many cases it'll be from their aspect. And my experience in the 3 years of council is that overwhelmingly the engagement that we've had with these organisations have been extremely positive and provided great value to our community. In fact, an example of some great value that has been provided of recent times is illustrated through Council's recent work with the development industry itself, when we created and finalised the Northern and Western Growth Corridors, one of the most important pieces of work that this Council's done. The knowledge, the expertise, their experience, their cooperation, the free time they gave us. These businesses have created extreme value for our council, for our council officers, for ourselves in our decision making, and subsequently provided great value to the community. So, as has already been said, in the vast majority of cases when we're meeting with developers or builders or builder developers or whoever falls under this definition, it's very much a positive thing. And I don't think we should be measuring ourselves against the failure of other councils. I think we should be measuring ourselves on the depth of our own integrity, the professionalism of our own officers, of which we have great confidence. It is also worth mentioning, seeing that we're singling out developers as a specific category of business, that these are some of the most generous people in our community. They provide millions of dollars of support to our community organisations throughout this city on an annual basis are extremely generous people and extremely generous families. So, in the absence of any recent wrongdoing, and I'm not aware of any of my 3 years, I'd rather have a far more positive approach, rely on our existing code of conduct that Councillor Murray and others spoke about, and to afford these people the same respect that we afford all other businesses in all other connections that I've spoken about. And if at some future time there was wrongdoing, then fine, let's have a register. But let's have some faith in our community. Let's respect the contribution from the people who work in this industry and who are absolutely critical. I know that they are going to be central to some of our major initiatives in future times. Delivering, the housing that we want for our development, delivering our social housing policy, helping with all other manner of challenges in community. Let's offer them the same level of respect that we provide to the rest of the community, and only have a measure like this when it's absolutely necessary. And I don't believe it is, based on the time that I've been in council. Let's not measure ourselves from the lowest common denominator. Let's create a bar ourselves in terms of the relationship we have with our entire community, including this group we're speaking about tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Manane. I'll just remind everybody to stick to the time. Listen out for the bell that went a couple of times then. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not against, I guess, the theory of it. I'm not too sure of the true intent, other than if we're looking for a mechanism to stop any illegal, poor behaviour, unethical behaviour between councillors, council officers and developers. I'm not too sure a register is really going to do what I guess is sought. It wasn't a register that caught out Casey councillors and different things. It's really a matter of process, and it goes back to what we have at our disposal at the moment, our capacity to, if we think something is untoward with the developer and or a councillor for that matter, we can go to the CEO, we can go through the mayor. We currently have a monitor still at Geelong. We have our code of conduct, and we have it may be the developers themselves wish to make a complaint against a councillor. Well, they still have those mechanisms and avenues as well. And just because if you have a register as such, whether it's a developer or whether it's a financier, whatever it might be, wherever money is involved or a particular gain is sought to be gained or a disadvantage is sought to be imposed on someone or something, that you've got to have faith in the system that exists at the moment. And I'm just not. I'll be interested to see. I'll support the notice, the motion, but I'm really interested to see what the CEO can come back with that actually gives us the confidence that it's better than what we've currently got. So that'll be something to see. But I think I would rather perhaps see a bit more pressure put on the state government for penalties, perhaps to actually make it far less attractive to engage in any illegal behaviour of any sort, let alone be it with a property developer, where the penalties are increased, where the capacity to investigate is much better, to actually look at particular complaints, compelling people to make statements, compelling people to produce evidence of their activities. I think may serve us better than just having a register, a book that says I met with developer A and we discussed, development B, whatever it might be. I'm just not sure of the true intent of what's sought to be achieved with a register when we already have considerable avenues at our disposal. But I guess we'll wait and see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure why Councillor Aitken has chosen to do this. I'm like most of the other councillors, Harwood, Contell and Murray and Councillor Manane have all said that there's nothing as untoward has been happening over the last 3 years. I witnessed from the outside previous councils a long time ago, I think 2010, I think, where a couple of councillors did the wrong thing. There was no register of interests and they were caught out and they were dealt with accordingly. So for me, I think we all meet with, or not so much now during COVID, but we all meet with developers of all size during our course of business, because that's what we do. But I think we need to have an open mind when we enter the chamber. That's our number one responsibility. So for me, I think what Councillor Aiken is saying probably doesn't go far enough with regard to that, because I think taking money from, I've always said this, taking money from political parties is a downward spiral because you're already beholden to them. So for me, that could have been added to it. I probably should have moved an amendment to it, but I think when the CEO comes back at the end of September, we'll probably have a different response from what he said. But I think we already have a register of interests, and we all sign that, and we all sign our code of conduct. So I think that's probably enough, because we are a good group. We've got along really well in the last 3 years, and we've got a lot done. And so we could all look back, we're getting towards the end of our term now, so we can all look back and say what a great job we've done. So I don't see why this is coming out now from Councillor Aitken, but I guess I have to support it, because if I don't support it, I'm going to look like I've got something to hide, and I don't. So I'll leave it at that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Any other councillors wish to speak to this one? Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. Look, I think the discussion around this has been really interesting. I am also supportive of getting a report back on this, and I'd be interested to see what our CEO comes up with. There are examples elsewhere of similar ideas. I understand that the city of Vincent in Western Australia has had something in place for several years, where there is a register of meetings between councillors and developers, so that could be a model to have a look at. But I actually think that I agree with some of the comments that have been raised around the scope of this, concerns around definitions and what the intent of it is. I think it would be – I don't believe that this is going to be any mechanism to catch out illegal behaviour. I think if you're engaging in illegal behaviour, you're probably not going to be recording it in a register of interest. So that's not really the purpose of this. This is about being open and transparent with the community. And I'd actually like to see something much more far-reaching that communicates to our community, who we're all meeting with on a regular basis. The City of Darebin does this. They have every councillor has a dot point list that they submit, and it's tabled at the end of every council meeting that outlines all the meetings that have taken place for them, all the events they've attended, and that just gets put on the public register. And for me, that I think that's a model that would be, I think, really. It would address some of the concerns that have been raised about, well, why are we singling out one particular group? Why couldn't we look at, all the other groups that potentially have an influence on our decision making, but also that the community might be interested in seeing what we're doing with our time, who we're meeting with, who we're hearing from. And so that, for me, I think, is a great model, and perhaps another one that the CEO could look at in developing the report. So, look, I'm supportive of the, I guess the principle of transparency is something I'm very supportive of. I think, none of us should have anything to hide or be worried about, and coming up with a mechanism that, improves transparency. If it's done well, I think it shouldn't be a major problem for it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can just be a simple tool around transparency. I don't think it needs to be framed around something around catching out criminal conduct, because I just don't think that's what these sort of registers really that's not the function that they're in my view, are able to serve. But look, I'm supportive of getting a report back and interested to see what we get.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Any other comments? Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. I think it's really all been said. It's been really quite an interesting discussion. And I too would welcome to hear what the CEO has to say about this in the future. But I do think transparency is a fundamental issue, and it's what the public might perceive or not perceive. Depends on the level of transparency. There is quite a range of stakeholders with special interests, and it goes well beyond developers. I don't know. I think it does come back to, as Councillor Manane said, depth of integrity, our code of conduct, as Councillor Murray, he said, comes back to self-regulation. I think there is such a thing as meetings of significance, and sometimes it's really important to have a witness at those meetings, and sometimes it's important, I think, to have a meeting of significance in a formal setting where you might have an officer to assist you to record the meeting. So there is really quite a range of matters to consider there. Councillor Aitkins raised a really interesting subject, and maybe it's going to get bigger than the original motion when the CEO reports back. But in the interest of transparency and good governance, I think that the principle and the sentiment is there, and I'll support the motion at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other comments? I'd just like to commend Councillor Aitken for bringing this to us for discussion. It's obviously a topic of interest, and I think that speaks volumes. So I also look forward to what the CEO brings back. So at that point, back to Councillor Aitken to close.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. Yeah, it has been a fascinating debate listening to all councillors. I want to thank you all for saying that you are prepared to support the CEO to investigate an opportunity for this council to be a leader in terms of transparency and openness. I personally don't believe being transparent is negative at all. I actually think being transparent and open is actually a really positive behaviour that elected officials should have at local government, state government and federal government level. I don't think we should just leave it on goodwill and the integrity of the individuals. I think we do have to continuously look at how we can improve our mechanisms of transparency and openness in the positions that we have. I mean, the City of Casey did have a code of conduct. It also had a register of interest. What it didn't have was a public list of all the meetings that were going on between officers and councillors and developers. And so this is an opportunity to have something extra on top of those base things that are conducted in the Local Government Act. And I was a little bit, the only part of the debate that did give me concern was that the suggestion that this would stop engaging and stop meetings. In fact, if a meeting is stopped because it has to be put onto a public register, to me it suggests the meeting should never have occurred at all, Councillor Manane. The fact that the meeting's actually going to be publicly listed doesn't necessarily warrant that the meeting should be stopped. In fact, we should be engaging and having as many meetings as we like as councillors. All this is doing is actually just creating a public register of those to have the principle of openness and transparency. So I certainly don't intend that this was an attempt to stop engagement and to stop meetings from occurring. All this was adding an extra layer of transparency and openness in the process. One of the historical things of my interest is that I sat through all the citizen jury sessions in the city of Greater Geelong, and that was the most significant democracy governance process that's been undertaken in Victoria and possibly Australia for local government. And one of the recommendations that actually came from that was to ban property developer donations to local government councillors and potential councillors. that was actually the only recommendation that was rejected by the Minister for Local Government and the current state government in terms of the citizens' jury. And I was disheartened because it was really fascinating listening to the community in that process, because they actually do believe that the interest group that had the greatest interest and influence on council is property developers, and that's why they requested that particular requirement to be put forward in the citizenship jury. Now, it was rejected, but we've actually got an opportunity now as councillors to be a leader in this space and take an opportunity, and I look forward to what the CEO can bring back for us to address the issues that were raised by my colleagues, and also the community's expectations and of modern representation and modern governance and good governance in terms of open and transparent practices.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. On that note, we'll put your notice of motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Well done. Okay, so Section D, Assembly of Council. May I please have a mover and seconder for the Assembly of Council? A mover, Councillor Murray, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Grisbeck, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Section E, Planning Delegations. I may have a mover and seconder for Planning Delegations. Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Mason. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Okay, now we need to go into confidential. So can I please have a mover and seconder to close the meeting to the public? Moved Councillor Contell, seconded Councillor Mansfield. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Okay, the meeting will now move into confidential. We'll just wait for the live streaming to stop, which will take about 1 minute.